Grace Loud of Invest Hong Kong.
It's sort of a day of photo opportunities. I remember the seat from last year, and I apologize to everyone over here because my back's going to be to you for a big chunk of the time, but I'll try to turn as I can, and if I don't often enough, I apologize in advance. I'm sorry. So, well, I think following on with Madeline's enthusiasm and Steve's excellent remarks to set us up for where we're going to go today, I'm here with a really great panel of folks. It's the Trans-Pacific Economic Diversification, Why Canada, Why Now? Navigating Global Change Through Trans-Pacific Partnerships. Steve was talking about collaboration, and what we're going to be talking about, Canada-Hong Kong synergies, talents and technology, Hong Kong's strategic location as a springboard to expand business into Asia and Canada. So I'm just going to read a few things. First, it's now been more than 8 decades since the end of the Second World War, and the long-running momentum toward globalization has clearly stalled. The highly integrated North American economy that Canada has relied on for generations is showing deep fractures. A global pandemic exposed overburdened health systems and disrupted a just-in-time supply chain that many assumed was unshakable. Precious metals are at historic highs, cryptocurrencies continue to confound analysts, and long-standing global norms are being rewritten in real time. Yet, against this backdrop of volatility, Canada continues to look outward, not inward, with a deliberate focus on diversifying its economic partnerships and strengthening its presence across the Indo-Pacific. Prime Minister Carney talked about variable geometry, Steve mentioned it, and the need for Canada to engage in a world in a pragmatic way. This year's conference theme, Trans-Pacific Economic Diversification, New Investment Opportunities, could not be more timely. As the world's second largest country, a G7 economy, and a founding member of the G20, APEC, and the CPTPP, Canada is not just participating in this conversation, it is essential to it. In a period defined by uncertainty, Canada remains a reliable, stable, and innovative partner. The Canadian Economic and Trade Cooperation Roadmap signed during the Prime Minister's visit to China just 10 days or so ago indicated that Canada was open to Chinese capital in energy, including clean energy and clean energy technologies, agriculture, and consumer sectors. China, for its part, looked forward to Canadian investment in services, new materials, aerospace, and advanced manufacturing. In addition, Carney's discussions with Xi Jinping and Li Qiang emphasized collaboration in energy, clean technology, and climate-related competitiveness, with an expectation that these would support two-way investment flows, including potential Chinese joint ventures in Canada's clean energy, battery, solar, wind, and energy storage projects. I'm delighted to be joined today by 3 leaders whose perspectives on Canada's economic diversification as insightful as they are distinct. We're a sort of ragtag group of people. It's not 4 business folks sitting at the front of the room. We've got a diplomat, a businessman, an academic, and a technology expert. Or as I think I wrote in my notes, what did I write in my notes? Okay, with me, voices representing innovation, global business leadership, and academic excellence. But what I'd like to do is I'd first like to ask each of you to just briefly introduce yourselves and talk about why Canada, why now? John.
Thank you, Charles. First of all, I am a Canadian from Ottawa, the great northern capital of North America. I left Canada, though, some years ago. I've lived in London, Paris, Jakarta, and here finally in Hong Kong, which was to some extent the original destination. My sense of geography was particularly poor in that period of time. I think this is a dynamic moment for Canada. I have been, up until recently, the group managing director of Jardine Matheson. We're a company that has been based here since 1832, and it's a company that has used Hong Kong very much as a springboard for investments and operating companies throughout the region, whether that's China or whether that's Indonesia and Vietnam and Singapore in the south. So today with Hong Kong Land as the chairman. Hong Kong Land is Jardine's property company, a listed company, making investments again in China and further afield in Southeast Asia. I think that we sit here at an enormously relevant time. This conference, as you said, is exactly at the right moment. But I think I wouldn't view this as a day's activity. I would view this as a months and years activity. And I know we'll talk about a bit about it. This is the planning session, but there's much work to be done.
Heather.
Yeah. My name is Heather Sheardown, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering at McMaster University, which is located in Hamilton, between Toronto and Niagara Falls. So we have the problem of being not in Toronto and not in Niagara Falls, but you're a stopover point in between. Born and raised in Canada, born and raised in Muskoka, actually, but moved to Hamilton when I did my undergraduate program. I did all of my training in Canada. My international experience is relatively limited, but to a 3-month exchange period in France when I was a teenager, and it opened my eyes to what the world could be. I'm a professor, a researcher, so I do research in health tech, and I think relevant to this conference, also an entrepreneur. So one of the things I felt when I was doing my research was we do all these great things in the lab, and then we don't translate them, and nobody ever sees them besides some other academic who reads your publication. So that's one of the things that I bring. Why Canada? I come from the perspective of the students, and I'm going to give you the McMaster perspective, but I think it's relevant to all of the universities across Canada. When our employers talk to us about our students, they say they're gritty. And that always makes me really proud. It makes me feel like, okay, we've trained them well. They learn how to look at a problem, and they learn how to figure it out. And that's what I would say is why Canada. So they've got not only the great technical training, but they've got the training to be able to look at the problem holistically. They do all kinds of extracurricular things. Our students today are way more involved, way more enthusiastic about external things than when I was an undergraduate. We were really focused on our studies. So I think the young people are the answer to why Canada.
Michael.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Yu. I'm our Managing Director and GM for Google in Hong Kong. My wife is a McMaster alumni. I'm also an alum of Western and the Ivy Business School. And I would say my journey with Google is very much mirroring this Trans-Pacific momentum that we're seeing. So starting in Toronto, moving to Singapore, and now leading our teams here in Hong Kong. So on the note of why Canada, I really believe it's two things. It's incredible talent and also really wonderful green energy, which is very relevant today, especially as this AI infrastructure is being built out around the world. They need incredible clean energy and technology. And we've invested heavily in Canada across our major hubs as well. So Waterloo is one of the largest engineering hubs that we have outside of the US. Montreal is actually focused on AI research and cybersecurity. And of course, our Toronto and Vancouver locations are really centered on business development across our advertising and Google Cloud platforms as well. And so not only is that amazing, but between Hong Kong and Google in Canada, actually we do a lot of talent exchanges as well. So not only from Hong Kong to Toronto, but actually from Toronto to here as well. And so I would say the two key things are incredible talent and strong, incredible green energy as well.
Yeah, well, thank you. I guess one thing, just following up on that, apparently Canada has the most educated population in the world, and so that certainly contributes to the talent aspect of it. But next, I just want to talk about sort of where Hong Kong and Canada fit together, because Hong Kong-Canada collaboration is very important. I look around the room, I see lots of Hong Kong Canadians, multi-generational families who've identified as Hong Kong Canadians for generations. And Hong Kong's probably the biggest Canadian city outside of Canada. So when people come to Hong Kong, you're dealing with Canadians. You know, there's Canadians or friends of Canadians or relatives of Canadians in almost any position of power in Hong Kong, whether it be government, academia, business. It's a really dynamic society that's really familiar to Canadians. And that was one thing that struck me when I first arrived in Hong Kong, is how friendly and open people are. You mentioned how McMaster's sort of in the middle of nowhere. Well, I'm from a town of 300 people in Nova Scotia in the Annapolis Valley, and it's about as far away from Hong Kong as you can get. I think you'd put a knitting needle through the globe. You'd go from Hong Kong and come out where I live in Nova Scotia. So, you know, I beat you on the obscurity part there. But Hong Kong reminds me of Nova Scotia. It's the friendliness, the way people approach, the how you build relationships here. It's really important to the sense of family, the sense of community, the vibrancy. And I think that's where Canada and Hong Kong have a real synergy. And how can we build on those synergies? How can we make that work for us, whether you're a Canadian business or you're an international business? John, I'll look to you. You've got really good experience, very extensive experience in Hong Kong, doing global things from a Canadian perspective. What does that mean? How does that work? What would you say to new people who are, you know, some people in the room have just come to AFF and TransPac for the first time this year, and it's their first time in Hong Kong, or their first time in Hong Kong in a very long time. How do you do things in Hong Kong?
Well, first of all, let me return to this question of why Canada. Because I think we need to equally be tremendously realistic as we begin your question. If you look at the travel schedules of foreign leaders, particularly in Europe, you will all see them coming this way pretty time soon. And so I can imagine the conferences over the next 6 months will start with why Canada, then why UK, why Germany, why France. You get the sense that this is a very competitive market, and I've ignored the absolutely strong competitiveness of many companies in China and many companies in Southeast Asia. So I think as Canadian businesses, as Canadians operating in Asia, I think you need to start with a real sense of this is going to be a priority. This building business in Asia is a priority, and that needs to be approached with a sense of determination. It's always very easy to attend to the profitable current business in Canada, perhaps, but if you're going to be in Asia and be competitive in Asia, you need to think very clearly about the capabilities you need to bring, whether it's the support of a board of directors, whether it's support of your founding shareholders. Everyone needs to be aligned, because I would say that making a successful business is going to take time and determination. There are going to be good days and bad days. And I think the good days and bad days equally need to be with a great time perspective. This is not, as I said earlier, a task of a few months. This is a task of years. This is a task of a lot of capital, both human, energy, as well as financial capital on the table. And I think everyone needs to take a bold view into what is required to be successful in this market. I would say Hong Kong, as part of that bridge, is a natural bridge for many Canadian companies coming in, as you rightly described it, Charles. This is a city which is very fluid, which is very mobile. It's a city where you can knock on anyone's door and generally get a very positive and welcoming response. It's a city that has talent. It's a city that has capability. It's a city that has capital. It's a city that has been on this journey many times before, either operating in mainland China, and we use mainland China as such a big term. I would break it down, as Steve was doing it earlier. Is it the Greater Bay Area? Is it the Shanghai corridor? Is it some of the other significant first, second, and other tier cities in China? Or is your proposition going to be more relevant for Singapore or for some of the very expanding demographically countries in Southeast Asia like Indonesia or Vietnam? Irrespective, I think in Hong Kong you find open doors and you find people and potentially partners that can really help you on this journey. I think large organizations can sometimes do it themselves. But even large organizations like Manulife, like indeed Hong Kong Land, rely very much on people on the ground who have previous experience, who will allow you to go faster, who will allow you to understand the pitfalls, who will allow you to understand what the competitive pressures you're against coming in. Because I think only in preparing well, having these many conversations, and I think Hong Kong is a great place to have these conversations, can you be putting your business into a position where you are going to be a winner over the long term. Not necessarily in month 3, but let's say ideally in year 3.
You mentioned long term, and I'm going to put Heather on the spot, and I apologize for this, but you've come downtown specifically for a conference last Saturday to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Iron Ring, which, for those who don't know, Canadian engineers wear an iron ring. And unbeknownst to me, it's a very Canadian thing. My husband's best friend is an Australian engineer, and I was talking to her one day, well, maybe a decade ago or something, and I said, "Oh, why don't you ever wear your engineering ring?" And she looked at me and she goes, what the heck are you talking about? And I said, "Well, you know that little jagged ring that all the engineers wear?" And she goes, "I still don't know what you're talking about." And then I sort of, did a bit of Google research and realized that it was a very Canadian thing. But the Canadian Iron Ring is celebrating its centenary, and we had 8 Canadian deans of Canadian engineering schools in Hong Kong last weekend. And I like to highlight the fact that 4 of those deans were women, or are women, which I think, shows, the diversity of Canada and the importance of, equal opportunity and all those sort of things that stand for Canadian values. But it was a really fascinating event. I unfortunately can only go for the first couple of hours. But you had a room full of hundreds of people, Canadian Hong Kongers, people with Canadian educations, there to celebrate their engineering degrees from Canadian institutions. It was a room not dissimilar to this. Entrepreneurs, philanthropists, academics, government officials. We had a Hong Kong government secretary who is an engineer, a Canadian education engineer. What were your takeaways? What were your impressions of that room? Because it's a lot of the same people doing similar things, and that's the workforce. Those are the people who need to collaborate to ensure that Canada is able to diversify in the world that we face today. So what was your impression of that crowd, and what are your takeaways?
So for those who aren't aware, the Iron Ring is a symbol of your obligation to the workmanship that you do as an engineer, to upholding the ethics. And we reaffirmed that as a group on Saturday. So it was a wonderful experience. I was struck by the number of Canadian trained engineers in the room. And I'm sure that there were many more who weren't able to make it. I've met with several since then who said, "Oh, I wish I could have come." So what that means to me is we already have a good start here. I've been taken by, we have more than 1,000 alumni from McMaster in the Hong Kong area, 400 engineers, many of them not working in engineering, not working in technical fields, working in finance, working in business, working across all aspects. So we have people here already who will be able to start and build and connections, and they're wonderful people. So, the event on Saturday to me was a first. It was an opening to many great things that will come.
Thank you. And I think it spoke to Canadian excellence and Canadian values in a very, I think, poignant way. I missed the reaffirmation ceremony at the end of the day, but I hear it was a really special moment for all the people in the room. I'm sort of bouncing around a bit. Michael, Google, So how does technology fit into this? I mean, Canada is an energy superpower. You need energy for AI. How does that work? Where are we going with AI? How does it? Steve was talking about AI in the workforce. You know, I'm pleased with myself that I'm using my iPad for notes and not a piece of paper. So I'm maybe not your Luddite demographic that you need to talk to. It's more sort of the younger people in the crowd. But how does AI factor into all of this? Because it's not just tech now. It's everyday life. It's aging. It's everything.
So I would say, you know, AI is going to be transforming pretty much every single industry, and it's not only reserved for the young. Actually, all of us need to be playing with this. Actually, I was taking an Ivy course and I'm sitting with many of the Manulife folks who were also re-educating and learning from each other. So it was really lovely to see that actually at the Ivy campus here. Maybe before I talk about AI, I wanted to talk about this Iron Ring ceremony because we had a number of Googlers join in the room as well. And they came away with so much pride, right? And we were discussing this internally. And it's, you know, we have a saying at Google where it's, you want to be both bold in your innovation, but responsible in your development. And so much of that, I think, aligns with, you know, what you were talking about at the conference and the Iron Ring ceremony. And so we just really felt like, hey, how do we talk about this more? How do we ensure that we share this out with organizations as we speak to them about their technology deployments? Many of them obviously being built by engineers, not just in Canada, but all around the world. And so just congratulations and thank you for joining. Look, on AI, I really view AI as a new platform layer, right? So we had the internet operating as a platform technology that there was a ton of innovation and new businesses. Then all of you have smartphones, right? That was sort of the next layer. And you saw a whole bunch of new businesses get created as a result of that. The same thing is going to happen with AI, right? And you know, we're about 2.5 years into this journey with AI. And I can tell you, we're seeing breakthroughs pretty much every single month, right? It's hard to keep up. And so what I would encourage everyone to do is ensure that you're playing with the technology. It's evolving quickly. The capabilities that we have today with some of our models are significantly more than what we had, you know, just a year ago at this conference when I was sitting down with all of you. Now, the role I think that, you know, Canada plays in this is absolutely, I think, to help power it. You know, one of the bottlenecks for AI deployment in the future is really, you know, centered on energy. But I also think talent as well, right? And, you know, for talent to go around the world, you know, I met many of the startups yesterday at the reception. And so for those of you who are evaluating Hong Kong, not just as a gateway, but also as an opportunity to accelerate, I would agree with John. You absolutely need commitment. This is a highly, highly competitive market. And I always say that Hong Kong is the only place in the world where all technology is brewing together, right? And they're innovating together, and you get very unique situations and innovations. And I think that's going to be great, right? It's going to be great for businesses who set up here, who kind of see what the leading edge could be, and adapt their products as they head in and expand into potentially mainland China or also across ASEAN as well, right? And we had some recent research studies with a lot of the companies here in Hong Kong. They're really looking also at ASEAN as another gateway for them to go and expand their businesses as well.
I want to touch on the talent aspect of that because AI, you know, does have an impact on the changing workforce. And I don't know what the statistic is, but something like 70% of the jobs we do today didn't exist 50 or 60 years ago. I think the diplomacy, medicine, the world's oldest profession, there's only a few things that have sort of, you know, made it through the years that we still have. How's that being shaped? Heather, you work with students that are going into the workforce of tomorrow. How does that intersect with business? What sort of conversations do business and academics have about the folks that need to go to work 10 years from now?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the best things about being at a university is you're working with the world's experts in everything. So, you know, if I need an expert in something, I can probably find it at McMaster, but if I can't find it at McMaster, I can go to Waterloo or U of T or Guelph or Western, all of which are within a couple hundred kilometers. So what that means for our students is they're at the cutting edge because they're being taught by the people who are at the cutting edge. And one of the really amazing things about engineering is that a lot of what we do is shaped by conversations with industry. So a lot of our research is tied to industry partners, is tied to partnered grants and that kind of thing. And then the other thing is our students are all doing work terms and co-ops with the companies. So they're bringing that back. And that just creates an ecosystem where things move forward constantly. So the students are, you know, globally doing co-ops. We had an alumni event the other day, and I have an alumni or an undergraduate student who came, and he's doing a co-op here in Hong Kong. So the students are looking at what's going on, and they want to learn. And the place of the university is to bring those experts together and to be able to shape that.
I just want to add, I think this is so important as Canada reaches out with much more vigor to have students going through some sort of international or immediately in that period, but post study, but in that formative period, let's call it, they are exploring other opportunities. I was very pleased that the HKUST, the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, recently signed an agreement with Queen's University at the MBA, so they'll be able, Queen's students will be able to spend at least a term here in Hong Kong. And I think by putting and making international opportunities very tangible in the formative years, that's what gives us much more power as we go forward. If people haven't traveled by outside and done something professionally at the age of 40, it becomes more and more difficult.
Yeah, and that used to be much more difficult in the engineering profession. The engineering profession is accredited. Our students had to follow a very strict curriculum. That has changed. So our accreditation board now allows our students to do a term abroad at various institutions. And what that does is it gives them that opportunity. And more of our students are choosing to do that. And certainly we encourage that.
And John, I'm going to sort of hop on something Heather said and ask you, what does business look for from the emerging workforce from universities? And then I want to touch on the sort of international side of how Hong Kong is an international city.
First of all, I would say we are very much looking for the best and the brightest. To state the obvious, perhaps, but this is really the starting point. As I said, this is a very competitive market. And so in terms of looking for Canadian graduates, they would be sort of those that are showing ambition, but showing capability behind them. I think this is immensely important. I suppose, too, the world is changing, as Michael says, very quickly. And so sheer technical skills and someone who has only technical skills, we see at a disadvantage going forward. We see not only is the world of technology changing, but frankly, the world of business is changing, geopolitics changes by the day, and so it's important that people coming out of school be agile in their thinking, not be programmed, not be dogmatic, and I think is a great advantage for many Canadians who, I describe it as have cultural transparency. When they're visiting other countries, they don't bring with them a recipe of how things should be done. So I think this thinking agility, this confidence that they are thinking agility is immensely important for us.
Michael.
Yeah, maybe if I can build on that. Actually, you know, when we hire at Google, there's really three things that we're looking for. The first one is learning agility. And so we test a lot on this because in our field, the world is changing so quickly that if they don't demonstrate this capability to always learn, there's no way they would survive within our company, right? One of the things that we do is, you know, if you want to go and do an extended program like a grad program or something like this, we can't hold the job for you because that might shift by the time you graduate and you come back. But we have high confidence that you'll continue learning and you'll adapt and you'll fit right back in again. The second thing we really look for is to be a self-driven change agent, right? And so how are you identifying, potential new solutions and actually doing something about it, right? And then the final one, I think, is really both a local perspective, but also a global perspective. How are they helping to connect the dots? And our organization is highly matrixed, and so they have to be able to connect the dots between different teams and different departments and be self-driven to then drive the right solutions forward. And so, this has always stayed the same, but obviously the technology and all this kind of stuff is changing, and so, they're able to keep up.
Yeah, and what always strikes me about where our students end up is never where they intended. So a chemical engineer by training never ends up in petrochemicals for their entire career, despite the fact that they might have thought that that would be where they would go. And I think that that speaks very well to the education that they receive. They're willing to continue to learn, they're willing to continue to grow and build on what they've learned. And, we talk about lifelong learning, we talk about teaching them how to learn, not knowledge per se, but how to learn things. And I think that that's critical in today's world.
Maybe a final comment on that. I think the ability to collaborate, I think this is a key word, and collaborate in an unstructured environment. I think, again, working in a large corporation, the environment can appear very static, but as soon as you go outside, you are in an unstructured environment. And the ability, the need to liaise with someone, figure out what their objectives are, what their limitations are, is immensely important in terms of creating solid business partnerships.
Yeah, thank you. Heather's comment sort of struck me in the heart because I have a degree in East-West German relations and graduated 3 weeks before the wall came down. So I can really relate to how irrelevant your education may be when you set out at the beginning. But I want to pick up the collaboration part that you mentioned, John, and talk about Hong Kong as the world's third most important international financial center, and just how Hong Kong functions. It's a city of business and has been a city of business for forever, really. But it's a collaborative place where people come, they make deals, they move on to other places. How does that, I guess, translate into business planning? Because you create relationships, but you also have to create an environment where you can grow. But people come, the startup comes, and then it gets bought by someone, and then they move somewhere else, and they move on. Because you have a lot of sort of venture capital folks who come through Hong Kong, who sort of one-stop shop and move on quickly. How do you maintain a relationship in such a quick-paced, fast-moving environment where a lot of people are coming to get rich quick, but you need to be a Manulife who's here for 125 years? How do you blend all those things together, be collaborative, be international? How does that work?
I would say, first, you really need to build your network here. The Chamber of Commerce, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce is a pivotal in this. And it's not to say that the Chamber will have all the answers, but the Chamber contains many of the people that will know other people that have all of the answers. Because I think this fluidity is very much the great source of power of Hong Kong. I may not know someone directly, but I probably know 2 or 3 people who do.
I think you do, but...
And that is really how Hong Kong works. I would say, though, there is a little bit of a test in Hong Kong. Because of that mobility, there is a weighing of people as they come through Hong Kong. Is this person really going to be here year after year, month after month? Let me think of signs of the commitment they're making. Or is this simply, I was told to explore Hong Kong. I'm on a bit of a Asian trip. This is Hong Kong. Oh, I need to leave. The plane's leaving for Singapore in a couple of minutes. I think consistency of coming, putting a flag in the ground saying, this may be my first trip to Hong Kong. This is what I intend to accomplish, but I am committed to coming here every quarter, say, over the next 2 or 3 years until we have a viable business. I think that degree of commitment that you put flags in stone, I think, make for a much more receptive and a much more fruitful trip to Hong Kong.
No, that was exactly the point I was looking for. I was looking around the room because there were some people I was speaking to last night in an event who had questions along that line. It was their first time in Hong Kong. They're actually married to a Hong Konger who was saying, oh no, we need to move from Toronto to Hong Kong because that's where we need to be. And he had all of these questions, but I think he had the right sort of questions. And so I guess, Heather, I'll turn to you. What are you, again, because of your background, what are your impressions on this? What do you think the practicalities are as someone with an analytical mind? How does that work? Does that make sense to you, or what's the logic behind that from an academic point of view?
Yeah, I was really pleased to hear John say that, if I don't know someone, I might know someone who knows someone, because I tell my students that all the time. So use the connections that you have, because you don't know who they know, and take advantage of those. And I think that that's what this is all about, is being able to make those connections, to build those bridges, and then to move on to the next person and develop those relationships. And that's what is going to allow Hong Kong and Canada to thrive as a partner.
Michael, do you have any comments?
The only thing I would say, and I would encourage even many of the companies that came through last night or are coming to Hong Kong for the first time, maybe make it clear what you are looking for as well, right? Someone cannot tap into their network to help you unless you make it known. So we spend a lot of time having conversations, but if we never get to the crux of, hey, how can we help you be successful? What are you looking for? And it could be a whole range of things. Then you can really put the network really behind you, and then we can really help you with that as well.
I think some of that's sort of a common sense approach, and I go back to the variable geometry comment from the Prime Minister Carney, and it's making things work for you in a practical, pragmatic way. How does practicality and pragmatism play into the Hong Kong business psyche? How is that important to profitability or longevity of longevity of a business?
Yeah, I would say practicality and pragmatism is at the heart of Hong Kong business, perhaps to a fault. I will say immediately. Sometimes the perspective of Hong Kong businesses can feel very short indeed. Conversely, I think those businesses that have survived, like Manulife, like Jardines, over a period of decades, are those that have a very long-term perspective. You can have a long-term perspective, I think, when you have built up a certain capital, whether that's an excellent team or whether that's actually shareholder capital behind you. You can have a long-term perspective if you have patient shareholders, and I think you can have a long-term perspective if you treat each and every day's activity as something that you're building for that long term, and simply get past the long term. But you need, if you're having a long-term perspective, you sometimes need to be a bit patient for results as well. And yeah, patience in Hong Kong aren't two words that generally get mentioned in the same sentence.
Yeah, well, I mean, Hong Kong is sort of the city that never sleeps, although I think that logo might be taken by another place in the world. But I'm sure Hong Kong will claim that at some point as it climbs its way up in the rankings in many ways. I think the next question that I have is, what do you do when it doesn't work? Like, what do you do when you have a bad day, when you're not profitable? I'll start with Michael, because he's sort of, in my mind, the eternal optimist. So I close to my heart. So what happens on the bad days, or when it's not working, or when it's too challenging? How do you get to the other side?
Yeah. So I love the comment about always thinking long term, right? I mean, Google is famous for never guiding the street, because we really believe long term we have a strategy and we need to stay focused to it. And we apply the same thing here in Hong Kong as well, right? And there's going to be things that happen, and that's okay, right? As long as we continue to stay true to our mission, which is how do we continue to help, advance Hong Kong together. That means helping our businesses. The business discussions don't change, right? They still need technology to be helpful and perform, right? We still need to work with NGOs, different sectors to ensure that we're enabling all of them for this AI era. All of that remains the same, right? And so for me, it's a moment of pause. I always say, you may not have time to meditate, but you all have time to take one mindful, deep breath, right? So slow it down a little bit, and then I would say, ask for help, right? And so we have incredible networks here. I'm still only 5 years into Hong Kong, right? I'm Hong Kong connected, my parents are from here, but in terms of navigating this environment, I still need help, right? And I'm always willing to put my hand up, ask my core group around us for some advice, and they always provide excellent counsel as well.
Well, it's funny because I'm listening to this and I feel like I wish I could have some of my entrepreneurship students in the room, because this is the kind of advice that they get. And I think sometimes they don't listen to it. I think sometimes they're so into what they want to do and where they want to go that they're not good at taking that breath. And when things don't go well, they get deflated. So I would love for some of my students who are entrepreneurs to be talking to some of you people and to hear your perspectives on things. I mean, they talk to people all the time, but I think seeing that it's a global perspective, not just, the local guy in Hamilton who's saying, well, it didn't work for you today, but maybe it'll work for you tomorrow. I think that would be eye-opening and groundbreaking for them.
I define the bad days. So there's in a simple model, there are sort of 3 bad days. First bad day, customer related. I think that's too broad of a topic and tends to boil down, so I will avoid this one for the purposes of our panel. Partners and politics are probably the 2 others. I think partners, you are going to have generally bad days when the first part of that equation isn't working well with a partner. And so I think it just is a reminder that when you're choosing partners, that is probably one of the most important choices that you will make. Whether it's ensuring that the partners has the same time perspective as you have, short or long, whether it's ensuring your partner has, to some extent, complementary resources to what you have, ensuring that the partner views your values and their values as somewhat aligned, I think is immensely important. If you go into partnerships without understanding the other's values, and if they contradict with yours, you're going to have really, really bad days. It's not going to show in the good times, but it will certainly show when the bad times come. And I think finally, in respect of politics, politics is a topic that increasingly seizes our attention from the very waking moment of our days until the end of our days. And it's not going to go away. And by the way, politics have always been a very significant issue, particularly in Asia. And so I think it's important, and again, it comes back a little bit to having that same perspective with a partner, to be steadfast. You are going to have rocky moments. Your board, your shareholders are going to be on the phone when there's sort of political events taking place. Should we, shouldn't we? Maybe we need to be doing things differently. Maybe we need to withdraw. So I think it's important, and I think businesses that have been built over decades, they don't ignore politics. Politics is very important for us, but they tend to look past the static, the friction of politics to another day. Politics, as we know, come and go, and I think it's important, if you're going to be ultimately successful with your partner, with your customers, that you see past this and indicate that you are here come hell or high water.
Good segue into my next question. I've had a lot of people in this room come up to me and say, oh, I heard the Prime Minister's speech in Davos. It's really amazing. I'm really proud to be Canadian. This is, a defining moment in global politics right now. I think we can confidently say, Canadians are riding high at the moment. Canadians are quite proud to be Canadian. the world's a difficult place. The Canada-China relationship has had its ups and downs over history, recently more down than up. Post the PM's visit to Beijing, again 10, 12 days ago, the optimism is high, the growth trajectory is upward. Sorry, I'm going to start with you, John, because you're closer in your business, and then we'll work our way down the panel. What's your take on that? I mean, we need to be cautiously optimistic because anything can derail anything at any time. We never know what's going to happen. What's your take on how optimistic should we be?
So I would say, unhelpfully, we need to be optimistic and cautious. So I think, let me start with optimism. This is a really relevant time. Canada has been more firmly put on the map over the past few months than it has been for some time. And I think with resources from government, with the intent coming from Ottawa, I would say to any business, use as many of those connections, opportunities, and indeed funding as can be got. This is a perfect moment to be taking advantage of those Canadian resources. I think it's a perfect time to be taking advantage of Canadian business organizations operating here, whether it's the Hong Kong Canadian Chamber of Commerce or whether it's the Canadian ASEAN Chamber of Commerce, to name a couple. Conversely, I think in all of your planning, you need to be cautious. If the winds change, you need to be ensuring that you're not going to immediately change with those winds. I liken it to sailing. Sailing, if you're going against the wind, you need to tack back and forth. But if you're going to get to where you want to go, you need to keep where you want to go absolutely fixed on your horizon. Because if a wind comes gusting along, you change course with the boat to keep the boat upright, AKA keep everyone happy, you may never reach your destination. Only by recognizing that there are going to be big gusts along the way, not even small gusts, only if you keep your eyes on that horizon point are you going to build a meaningful business, not only in Hong Kong or China, but throughout Asia.
Heather.
In this role, I've learned I'm a glass half full kind of person. So I'm very optimistic. I'm optimistic from a couple of perspectives. I'm optimistic from the perspective of Canada looking outward and looking beyond partnerships in the US. And from the scientific point of view, scientists get together regularly, talk about things. Science doesn't have borders. The world doesn't stop because you cross a border when you're doing science. So I'm really excited that we'll be able to do science with parts of the world now that we haven't been able to do science with in the past 5 or 6 years. Partnerships in China were not viewed favorably, and I'm optimistic that that will change, and I'm hopeful, and I believe that will be groundbreaking, because what that will do, we talked about collaboration earlier, it'll allow people with different perspectives, with different knowledge, to come together and solve the big problems that are facing the world. I'm also optimistic from the perspective as a dean, my students being able to see more of the world, and us being able to have a more global reach. In engineering, we have representation from more than 100 countries in the world in our students. That makes the faculty a great place to be, because our students are talking to people with different perspectives, with different backgrounds, with different understandings of the world. And I'm hopeful that that will be able to grow. And I'm hopeful that Canadian students will now see the world as a place for them as well. So rather than looking at graduate schools only in Canada and the US, they'll look at graduate schools in Europe, in Asia, in Australia, and think about the knowledge that they can gain from going elsewhere and doing something.
Michael.
Yeah, the world is also increasingly connected, right? I mean, I will borrow from what our founders say at Google internally. I'm uncomfortably excited, right? And so, you can see this incredible glimmer And the long term stays the same, but you've got to also work through, I think, these moments of sparks, right? And I think I'm with you also. Technology is really a connector for the world too, right? And if technology is put towards a good place, it can do really, really incredible things. And maybe if I can give the audience a little bit of homework here, we have a great YouTube documentary which details Demis Hassabis, who's our CEO for Google DeepMind, and his journey of developing AlphaFold, which won the Nobel Prize. And this technology is open sourced and given free to the world. And researchers and companies here in Hong Kong are actually leveraging this to speed up medical discoveries, drug discoveries, and things like this. And so, I think these are these moments of uncomfortably excited of what technology can do, and don't forget about that too.
That makes me chuckle because I was thinking, you turn the lights on in my friend's home, not you personally, but Google. She relies on you, and she moved here a couple of months ago, and she had the hardest time sort of getting it set up. And I just said, look, see if one of the neighbors has someone under 16, and just invite them over, and they'll do it in 5 minutes. And that's what she did, and it worked really well. I'm cognizant of the time, and I saw Madeline looking around and pointing at this, but usually there's a timer that starts to blink or something. I don't see a timer this year. So maybe we could turn to the audience for a couple of questions. Oh, is there a time? Oh, it's hidden by the table. Oh, sorry. Am I going overtime now? Is that? Oh, it is breaking. Oh, sorry. Oh, so we're actually 5 minutes and 22 seconds over. Sorry, I thought, I saw you standing there. You weren't waving, but you looked concerned. But I thought, oh, well, usually there's, oh, yeah, my apologies to everyone. It's blocked by John's table. So on that note, can we take one question, Madeline? So one question, the quickest hand, I guess. It better be an easy question that we can answer quickly.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your profound insight and wisdom. My name is Patrick. I have a quick question about AI. What is your greatest hope and deepest fear for AI? Thank you.
Oh, I say, could we go to Michael last? Just because if we get the expert view on what it is, then the three of us don't really get to say anything. So I'll start with the Terminator. And then I guess, the best thing is I think it will, help organize my life better. But I think that's a challenge that I'll leave to my husband. John, why don't we go to you?
I would say I hope it enhances how each of us work every day. Jobs will be lost, but I think a lot of jobs will be significantly enhanced and created as well. That is my hope. My fear is that in taking out many entry-level positions and analytics based types of positions, that will interfere with the judgment and wisdom those types of positions give us as we grow into our 30s and 40s and beyond.
Heather?
Greatest hope, the next discoveries. Really, when I think about something being able to put together all of the knowledge and bring it together and produce some ideas that then we can research. That's my greatest hope. My greatest fear is for the young people. We have students right now who cannot start a question without putting the question into some form of AI to get that little prompt, that little push. And, we're having to train them how to do that. So that's my greatest fear, is that it's going to stifle their creativity.
Michael?
I don't think we know yet.
You could have gone first.
I have lots of hopes and dreams, right? And I think the team here articulated well. But I'll tell you, maybe I'll give you another homework to do, okay? So there's an incredible talk between Demis, our DeepMind CEO, and the Anthropic CEO recently at Davos. And the two of them debated 1 year on, because they were on the stage, a year ago. And I think it's quite fascinating to peer into the mind of how we're thinking about building out AI right now. And even at Google, our approach to long-term, AGI is different than how we think about it, from others, right? And I think Demis had a really interesting point, which at least I picked up on. We're trying to build an AI that hopefully we'll know what questions to ask actually. You know, today the benchmarks are really focused on how fast I can do this and can this do this better. He's really thinking about trying to solve humanity's greatest problems, right? That could be medical, science, you know, and how do you develop something that can help us ask the right questions, which I found quite profound, right? I'm still digesting it, but again, I'm only 2 years into this AI journey like all of you, and so I'll leave that to you to decide and the audience to decide as well.
Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, John, for joining me here today. Thank you, CanCham, for bringing us together for this conversation in front of all of you here. My sincere apologies that we didn't get more time for questions, but I honestly didn't see the small screen, and I thought the big screen was the screen from last year. So I thought, oh, it's not there yet. It'll switch over and start counting down soon, and now I'm nearly 10 minutes over. So we will stop there. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde. Thank you so much, and have a fantastic day.